Good things come in threes, I think they say, and since I've talked about ways I thought two of the Bat family characters could have been handled better by DC Comics over a decade ago, let's look at the third character I think got mishandled, Jason Todd. If you're not familiar with your Bat lore, let me catch you up real quick. Over the decades, there have been 5 people to canonically fill the role of Robin, the junior partner to Batman. Jason Todd was the second Robin, and after his origin was fiddled with so that he was less of a carbon copy of the previous Robin, he became something of a nuisance, at least in the eyes of then Batman writer Jim Starlin. After a few years of Jason being written as a former street tough who got caught stealing the wheels off the Batmobile, in Batman 424, Jason allows a criminal to fall to his death. Where did he learn that, Bruce? 2 issues later, the Death of the Family storyline by Jim Starlin and Jim Aparo began. This story is famous for the telephone poll that asked readers if Jason should live or die. With less than a 100-vote difference, the verdict was in. Jason Todd would die. About 15 years later, fans started to get hints in stories like Hush and As the Crow Flies that Jason might not be dead after all. This was confirmed in the storyline Under the Hood by Judd Winnick, Doug Monk, Eric Battle, and Shane Davis, where Jason comes back as the anti-heroic Red Hood, revived via a combination of an alternate universe bratty Superboy punching the walls of reality and one of Ra's al Ghul's Lazarus pits. Yeah, comic books can be weird sometimes. Upon his return, Jason was upset Batman never avenged his death at the hands of the Joker, and in his eyes, allowed the Joker to continue killing others by not killing him himself. So Red Hood became sort of DC Comics' version of the Punisher, willing to kill bad guys while Batman never crosses that line. Or in Judd Winnick's own words in this interview from 2005, he's even willing to kill innocents while hunting down the bad guys. But Winnick insisted Jason wasn't a bad guy. I don't know, guys, if you kill innocents, you're definitely not a good guy, and I wouldn't even call you an anti-hero either. Even the Punisher won't kill innocents. I had quite a few problems with Jason Todd's resurrection. As a singular story that doesn't have to worry about making a mess in the rest of the DC universe, this is a great idea. In fact, one of my favorite animated movies from DC is Under the Red Hood, which tightens up some of the mess of the story that it's adapting. If you do the resurrection of Jason by itself without having to follow it up with questions of what now, I think it presents some great potential for internal drama for Batman. He's been fighting a losing battle to clean up Gotham for 10-15 years by this point, so he probably knows Jason has a good point that his methodology isn't enough to get the job done, but he still resolutely refuses to cross that line. Winnick summed it up better than I could in the aforementioned interview. Jason is Batman's worst nightmare. The worst thing that could happen to Batman is this, right here. It's horrible, and that makes it interesting for the character. Like I said, that works great when you don't have to worry about the aftermath. How does Batman handle this other than being grumpy when Jason yells at him? You know, if Frank Castle was in Gotham shooting up criminals, Batman would take him down to the station and let Commissioner Gordon arrest him. But does he do that with Jason? What do the police do when Bruce Wayne's adopted son, who disappeared a few years ago, is now sitting in a cell and he says he knows who Batman is? But if Batman lets Jason go to keep killing bad guys, isn't that basically admission Jason is right and killing these guys is necessary to keep the city safe? Why not cross the line yourself if you're going to allow Jason free to do whatever he wants? If Jason is going to remain a part of the DC universe after his resurrection, what are we going to do about all these bad guys that he hasn't killed? He's mad at Batman that he didn't kill the Joker, but why didn't Jason? Obviously, DC isn't going to permanently kill their biggest bad guy off for merchandising reasons, so that puts Jason and Batman both in an awkward spot. But you don't have to worry about any of that if you do this in isolation, like the animated Under the Red Hood movie. So what would I do differently? If I'm being honest, I would not bring Jason back at all. This seemed like it was meant to make a big splash, and nobody thought about what would happen when that splash left no water in the swimming pool. So instead of figuring out what to do with this character, he tries to replace other characters. He's mad at Tim Drake for replacing him as Robin, so he beats him up. Then he tries to become the new Nightwing, and then he tries to become the new Batman. You could maybe make him trying to displace everyone in the DC universe as a character flaw, but this still doesn't help with what to do with him in the long term. Beyond my problems with bringing Jason back conceptually, I think the timing really stunk here. The Under the Hood story began immediately after the War Games crossover finished off, giving absolutely no time for some breathing room so that audiences could get acquainted with the new status quo of a war-torn Gotham and a newly returned Black Mask as the head of the criminal underworld, and a grieving Bruce feeling responsible for Stephanie Brown's death, on top of being considered an enemy of the police department for his behavior during the crossover. Nope, we don't have any time for that. We immediately have to jump into this huge story where Jason Todd comes back. Then it's interrupted so we can retcon some of the bad writing of War Games with more retcons with the follow-up storyline War Crimes. Then more of the Red Hood stuff. Kabloom! Explosion! We don't know if Jason or Joker are still alive. And then we jump forward in time 1 year. We once again change the status quo of Gotham, effectively completely abandoning missing everything from the War Games crossover that could have been interesting to explore in the long term. Now Batman is nice because Grant Morrison likes the 1970s hairy-chested love god Batman, and can you blame him? Commissioner Gordon is back in charge of the police, and Red Hood is harassing Nightwing for some reason. Then he goes to Star City to screw with Green Arrow for some reason. Apparently he wanted to prove kids have no business in the superhero world, but it seems like after all he's gone through, he would be fighting to protect kids in danger, not put them in even more danger. It was around the time of the one-year jump that we got Batman Annual 25, which explained Jason's revival thanks to Superboy Prime Punches and Lazarus Pits. Then, as if one company-wide crisis isn't enough to interrupt Jason's ongoing narrative, he becomes part of a group sent across the multiverse to rescue Ray Palmer, the Atom, for some reason. Then you get the Battle of the Cow storyline, where Bruce is presumed dead because he was thrown backwards in time to the caveman days. Yeah, comics can be weird sometimes. And Jason wants to become the new Batman. It's at this time Tony Daniel, Battle for the Cow writer, considers Jason to be a full-on villain. Yeah, you think? Then, in the new Batman and Robin series, Jason, with a new sidekick, Starlet, acts as a kind of dark mirror to Batman and Robin. Believe it or not, despite how bat-poo insane a lot of this sounds, like nobody really had a clear idea what Jason was up to, so they were just playing it by ear from appearance to appearance, I actually do like some of this if you tighten it up and rearrange some of the pieces. So how would I do that? For one, move this resurrection a little further away from the one-year jump. Either push it earlier in time, maybe get rid of the As the Crow Flies story that hinted at him still being alive, and just get right into him being alive. Or you could have even given Judd Winnick his own new Batman series completely dealing with Jason Todd's return. After 15 years of being dead, this reveal needed some weight, so a new series promising the Batman books will never ever be the same, this is one of the few times where the hype would not feel like it was all talk. Then you could have had this happen immediately following Hush, and don't interrupt this new series with the War Games crossover or its follow-up War Crimes. Or you could push his return to happen after Infinite Crisis and the one-year jump. The problem with that would be Batman going on a year-long walkabout was supposed to be because of all the horrible stuff that happened to him in recent years, like plagues, earthquakes, sidekicks getting crippled, murdered, and resurrected as supervillains. All that is supposed to pile up and make Bruce go away for a while and come back refreshed. That was Grant Morrison's intent with the early parts of his run anyway. If Jason comes back after the one-year jump, you'd be getting in the way of Batman trying to be a more pleasant person. But Batman being a smiley, not perpetually angry guy was never going to last anyway. But if you bring Jason back after 1 year later, you can follow his journey a little easier, and you still have plenty of other horrible things that happened to Batman that could lead to him leaving Gotham after Infinite Crisis. Also, don't include Jason as part of a multiversal search for Ray Palmer. This seemed like a 1 year stopgap until someone figured out what to do with Jason in the long term, and then they just went back to him being an on-again, off-again adversary, jumping around in different Batman books. Now, if you wanted to do something kind of like Marvel's Exiles, with characters who aren't supposed to exist but do, jumping around the multiverse having adventures, I guess that'd be fine, but it'd still feel disappointing when I think of some of the things they could have done with Jason directly concerning Batman. Although that DC Exiles thing would be crazy fun if they committed to it, instead of making it a completely unnecessary prequel to Final Crisis. And I would try connecting this more with some of what Grant Morrison was doing with Batman at the time. I know Morrison is something of an auteur, and if he's working on a 7-year Batman epic sprawling across several titles, he won't want other writers coming in with their own ideas to add to the mix. But Batman isn't Grant Morrison's character, and there were several Batman books coming out during his run jumping across different titles. So whether it be Judd Winnick, Tony Daniel, Scott Lobdell, or whoever it is guiding Jason Todd, maybe they could bounce their own stories featuring Jason off of what Morrison was doing with his own Batman stuff. So this is a rough idea after a few days of mulling this over. 2003 introduced us to Nisa Al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul's at this time unseen daughter in Batman Death and the Maidens. After this story, I don't think we ever saw her again except as a victim of Cassandra Cain during her superhero gap year following Infinite Crisis. But since we've already got a video where I suggested a better way Cassandra could have been handled besides being turned into a supervillain, let's say Nisa didn't die in that story. Over the course of Morrison's Batman saga, he established Talia al Ghul as a threat in her own right. Before this, she was always allied with her father, but was conflicted because she loved Batman, so she wasn't entirely committed to her father's schemes. This was kind of put to an end in Death and the Maidens, where both daughters of Ra's al Ghul declared themselves enemies of Batman. Though with the rest of that story being quickly ignored in the following years, I'm not sure if Morrison was using that idea and running with it, or individually came to that same idea and developed it over the course of his run. But by the end of what Morrison was doing, Talia had her own world-spanning organization and is in full bat-kicking mode, no longer holding back because of her feelings for Bruce, or even her feelings for her son, now fully allied with Bruce. So let's say either because Ra's died in Death and the Maidens, or because he was later locked up in Arkham with a pseudonym given by Batman, that the daughters of the demon are now at war with each other. Death and the Maidens hinted that Talia was okay with her sister mentally and physically torturing her, but I'm gonna say after a few months she probably realized, hey, I don't like that lady, and the Demon's Head organization split up, with many who are loyal to Ra's going with Talia, but Nisa's more brutal tactics attracting the ones who are tired tired of Ra's always failing because he couldn't defeat the Bat, and maybe they think that Nyssa will be able to. So what if Jason is revived by one of the sisters to be used as a tool in this Al Ghul civil war of sorts? Talia has already sent her son Damian to infiltrate Batman and basically distract him while she's doing her own thing. Maybe she wants to give another gut punch and resurrect Batman's only failure and use him as a weapon. This would come in handy when she sees doubts in Damian about what they're doing. Or Nyssa could see Talia sending her son to disrupt Batman, and she decides to try to copy that and brings back Jason to work with her. I would want whoever brings him back to gently brainwash him to act a certain way. Jason genuinely believing Bruce is a failure and his is the only logical method of fighting crime is more devastating, so you could still play with that a little bit. Whoever brings him back plants ideas in his head that Bruce allowed him to die, wasted no time replacing him, and allowed the Joker to run free. Half-truths, so that it seems Jason has gone down the path of the dark side, but eventually you find out he was conditioned to act this way. If you ever want Jason to be an ally to the Bat family that he eventually became, his redemption could feel more believable. Like the Winter Soldier at Marvel Comics, he was an enemy, but it's all mostly brainwashing. There were a lot of suspicious similarities between the revival of Bucky Barnes and Jason Todd at almost the same time, so go all the way with this and use this idea Ed Brubaker used in his Captain America run with Winter Soldier. You can still put some doubts in Jason and Bruce's heads, though. Was it brainwashing, or did he genuinely believe in what he was doing, and it just took a little nudge from one of the Al Ghul sisters to get him to that place? Redemption is believable, but him as a villain also hurts Batman's heart and soul. After you've played Jason as a villainous pawn / loaded weapon one of the Al Ghul's points and lets loose, he feels broken and doesn't think he can join the Bat family like nothing happened. Despite doubts about Jason's stability, Batman and Nightwing offer encouragement to him, but Jason says, nah, I gotta hit the road, find out who I am and what my purpose is. Then spend a year with Jason doing the Kung Fu television series, traveling the DC universe with the clothes on his back and a motorcycle. Pre-death, he probably didn't leave Gotham that much, and post-death, he had darkness clouding his mind, so this is his first chance at some real-world experience. On the road, he meets a teenage girl a lot like Starlet, daughter of some bad guy and scarred by some other baddie. She can mirror Jason's own life before his death. His dad was a gangster, and then he got pulped by the Joker, so Jason sees a chance to redeem some of the stuff he's done by putting her on a better path, kinda like how Batman offers a better life to his various Robins. But with Bruce and Dick Grayson, Bruce giving Dick an outlet for his rage at his parents' death turned him into a lighter, almost carefree person. With Jason taking on Starlet, I won't say he's gonna be evil or even anti-heroic, but it's not as bright and optimistic as that. Jason's still young, almost 18 if Bruce is to be believed, shortly before War Games, so he's not cut out for positive instruction and guidance. All he knows is violence, so that's what he has to pass down to this kid. But he sees what this is turning her into, so it forces him to reevaluate what he's doing and try another way. He tries to tell Starlet this isn't working, but she does not accept that. Now that she sees Jason's concerns for her own future, she offers to be his own conscience and continue with him down this road of self-discovery. If he becomes too emotionally wrecked in whatever adventure they're having, she's here to keep him from going too far. Even if he doesn't kill or maim, he might still get a little carried away, and she can keep that from happening. He won't be a warm fatherly figure like Batman, but more of an awkward big brother who you love and he loves you, but it's hard to express that love. By this point, you could have Jason join the rest of the Bat family for the big crossovers, but he would mostly have his own thing away from Gotham, where he can grow and not be limited to what he can do by the existence of 3 or 4 heroes in close proximity. And by the time you get to the New 52, you could buy him as the leader of the Outlaws, though I'd say this is the new iteration of the Outsiders, which has always kind of been Bat adjacent anyway. Bruce has his extended family with the League, Dick has his with the first generation of Titans, Tim has his with the Young Justice generation of Titans, now Jason can have his own crew of misfits who don't feel like they belong. You could carry over your Starlet type character here and round out the group with other characters seeking redemption. Some people might have liked the way Jason was brought back. I felt like his return could have been great if it was given room to breathe and go in a direction. Instead, he came back amidst a few other big events, and his status as an angry anti-hero lingered for a few years before they made him a tamer version of what he was before the New 52 reboot. It's fine, I guess, but I think what I have here could have been better. Let me know in the comments if you like this one. Should I do more comic book related rewrite type videos or stick to movies and TV shows? I'll give you some time to decide. In the meantime, next I'll be doing something different, so check that out next week. Until then, have a great day. Catch you later.